Hi, good morning, everyone. Welcome to Office Hours, where we answer your questions 7 days a week. Cindy's our reader today. Cindy, what's your first question?
Our first question today is from Scott Hancock in Tokyo. For ringing out a medium-sized venue, if having an experienced pro do it is 100, how would you rate a moderately experienced person doing it with a DBX DriveRack PA2? Content is a town hall, no serious music.
Ronnie?
Yeah, so basically the question is about this unit here, which, by the way, I have sitting in one of our racks. It's actually a one-box do-it-all solution for driving sub-bass, mid-tone, and the high in the three separate outputs, and you just give it a stereo input, and it will separate all those frequencies into their respective band. And it also does a lot of other stuff. It also have an input for a measuring microphone, which you place out in the room. And you can use an iPad app to just remote control everything going on inside this unit. And it will just measure the room tone, and send test signals to each of the individual elements in the speaker stack. And the measuring microphone will feed that audio back to the unit, and the unit will, on its own, find out how the frequency response in the room will sound. So if a moderately sound technician is going to use the PA2 and actually understands how the DriveRack is working and the limitation of it, and is actually good at using it, I would say in many, and this is of course my opinion, in many situations the DriveRack will do a better job than many audio engineers will do if they have limited time. So being a system engineer and setting up the PA system in a room is a tedious task and will take a lot of time. This is a quick fix. This DriveRack is not necessarily the best sounding equipment. It is lacking in a few areas. But for spoken words, this unit is actually doing a lot of the heavy lifting, and will definitely do a good job of making the system perform to its maximum in audio. It also have functionality like feedback destroyers, etc. And of course, this is an automatic device, so you should still be doing some manual controls and have a good knowledge of how to use this unit, because it doesn't do magic. It's just a tool, and you also need to use this tool the correct way.
Next question.
This one comes to us through the QR code. Roger Martin in Tonto Basin, Arizona asks the panel, wanting to stream 24/7 to YouTube, 1080p 30 frames, using OBS H.265 with VLC. Playlists need to connect to external SSD. What's the cheapest Windows Mini PC? Run across this link. Your thoughts? With the link.
Alex?
Yeah, I don't know if I would approach it that way. So, I mean, you might be able to do it. I think that what you're going to find is if you're using VLC and OBS and you're wanting to run 24/7, you may find that this is not stable for a long period of time. You're going to have a variety of issues that come up. What I would really consider is some kind of hardware playout that can simply run this. You might be buying a couple things, but I wouldn't. But like an A10 Mini with a hyperdeck. I have my hyperdeck here that runs the test. That goes out to lots of venues all at one time. It runs 24/7, and it's a hyperdeck. I pushed the button twice, and now it just plays, and it plays 24/7 unless it loses power, And so and it's running into an external encoder. And it just runs. You can hack this together, but I would be careful of, there's this, there's a lot of things that seem like they're easy and you should be able to do them with software. But what I would say is that this starts to, you'll spend a lot of time on it and you'll be sitting there kind of trying to pull things out of it rather than just using some low level hardware to just loop things. and make it work. And I think that you may find that that's going to be more stable, especially if you want to do a 24/7 output. The other advantage of using a switcher in the middle, and again, if you can afford it, get an external encoder. These are all things that may be more than what you want, but you could do it with a Blackmagic switcher and just have something basically running in through that process. The other advantage is if you need to swap it out, change it, whatever, you now can put up slates, video inputs, all kinds of other things. So having some small switcher in line, I don't really use the Blackmagic encoders that often for the thing, but if you're doing it 24/7, you may find that this is a cost-effective, stable way to do that.
See, now, Alex, what you need to do is have terminal run after a power failure and have it send little telnet commands over to that hyperdeck, and then it'll just restart.
We were just having this discussion. Someone said like, well, we really want something that'll just turn back on. I was like, it's literally like a command. Like you could build a shortcut that just says, when I lose power, send this command to that IP and it'll come right back up again.
Next question.
This question comes to us from Ryan Rademan in Chicago, Illinois, U.S. I'm looking for recommendations for new in-ear monitors. I like Linsoul ZS10, but they're unsightly. I'd like my next set to be ultra-low profile, not visible to camera. Want to optimize comfort and aesthetics, less concerned with quality of drivers.
Unsightly? Nigel?
Yeah, so I'm got Linsouls in now, and I find they're great for the show. If I want something a lot more low profile, then I'm going to move to my in-ears, which you either come in single ears or double ears. You've got to make sure you get the left-right correct. I, by the way, have had bad experience with the flex ones. I don't like them as much as the ones that are more firm, or as they call them, the original. But over the years, I've used those. They come in a nice little packing case. You're not going to be able to mix audio from them. It's a very low drive, and you have to push it quite hard sometimes. But they're very successful for me.
Courtney?
Well, if you really want low profile invisible, you want to go to the James Bond type, the Phonak Roger earpiece, which you can get in 216, or you can get as an induction type earpiece. But the 216 megahertz VHF ones work pretty good. They're tiny. They're the color of your ear, and they fit right inside. Now, if you don't want to spend $1,700 on a single earpiece, you can go with the Bumblebee, the next step up, which is the very low profile. Some of the ones that Nigel was showing that go in your ear and have this tiny little wire that you can hide over the back of your ear. Those are about $265. Or if you're like me, you can go super cheap, and what I'm using is the HYS security earpieces that are 2 for $20. So I like the sound of it. And hey, do you see it in my ear? I don't know. It's in that ear there. They're pretty low profile, but it's a tube that goes, to behind your collar, and it attaches to your collar. So if you're being shot from cameras at all angles, you can see the little tube running down the back of your collar and watch the driver. But it sounds pretty good, and I'm able to hear everybody on the panel here, and the fidelity is pretty good for a $10 earpiece.
Alex?
+1 on the Bumblebee / in-ear. I think in-ear and Bumblebee might be sharing a manufacturer, just different brand. And so Ear Hero is another one that you can look at. That one is kind of known, but I think that the Bumblebees are more comfortable than the Ear Heroes. And the Phonaks are amazing, but batteries. That's all I have to say. You'll be swapping batteries all the time.
Next question.
Harold Williams in Portsmouth is asking, which digital audio workstation on Windows 11 should I use to get Dante inputs from our X32 onto separate tracks? They're always in pairs.
Harold, I have some interesting news for you. I'm a Mac guy. I'm a little out of my depth here for that, but I would recommend bring this back on a Wednesday, unless Alex has something more to say. We have an awesome audio panel on that day who will knock this one out of the park. Go ahead, Alex.
Yeah, I think that that's how you define it in the DAW. I don't think that that's you should be able to open up, whether it's Reaper or Pro Tools or many of these other ones. It's defining what the input is. I know that in Logic, so I'm a Mac guy too, so I'm going to extrapolate my Mac knowledge, is in Logic, it depends on how I set up those channels when I set up the record. So if I'm setting up those channels, they'll naturally be set up as stereo channels, typically oftentimes. But you can have them set up as individual tracks, and then those tracks should go there. Same thing with Resolve. You could also use Resolve for this, and Resolve will take those as it. But it's not a function of which DAW it is. It's how you have that set up. And so for me, the two primary ones that I record to are Resolve and Logic, and both of those have been successful at just single track for everything coming in from the X32.
Courtney.
Yeah, you might try Audacity because it's a free download. It's available. It runs on Windows and everything else. It does. I haven't tried it. It does say it supports Dante Virtual Sound Card, but with some limitations. It supports the WDM Windows driver model audio and DVS, so it can be configured to use WDM, making it compatible then with Audacity. So you might have to use the WDM drivers for it. And I don't know if you'll be able to get all 32 channels in. It may only show up as 2 channels of Dante audio that you can route to Windows using Audacity. So you might be better off with the Pro Tools.
And our resident audio guru, Mickey McIntyre, comes in the chat and says it is building the I/O and track routing in the in the DAWs accordingly. So there is get into your routing. And if you're still having some trouble, come back on Wednesday and we'll expand. You can not only ask questions, but also vote on the questions and chat about the questions in Makana. That's our system that you can get into just by going to officehours.global/join. So if you go to officehours.global/join, you can put in your name, put in your email. You'll get an email the next day or with all the stuff on how to get into the show and how to get into the back end, how to get into the Discord. Check it out, officehours.global/join. Next question.
Next one's from Paul Val, who's in Austin, Texas. What are the benefits of using balanced cables for audio connections?
Ronnie.
Yeah, so this is a returning question. We have it at frequent times. So the balanced audio is seen as a more professional and is coming onto soundboards or going from microphones and into mixers, etc. And unbalanced signal is kind of the ones that you have from your stereo equipment in your living room or simpler type of products. The difference is how they handle noise that is sent magnetically into the cable. So here's a sketch that I got from Razantech Audio. I'll drop the link in the chat. This explains it kind of good. So the first one, the top one, is the balanced audio, where there is a signal coming from a microphone. That signal is inversed and sent on one of the 2 cables that carry the signal, whereas the hot signal is the one coming directly from the microphone. And in the end of that chain, so typically that would be the sound mixer, the inverted signal cable, which is called the cold signal in this sketch, that is reversed back on top of the hot signal, and the output will then kind of be noiseless. In the other unbalanced audio sketch, you see that the hot signal is carrying the entire signal. Noise is then applied to that signal, depending on how long the cable is. Keep it as short as possible if you need to use an unbalanced audio cable. And as a result, you will have both the signal coming from the microphone in addition to the noise as an output. So basically, the balanced audio is to eliminate noise because of the reversing of the signal that is being repaired at the end of the cable. So that's basically the short version of this. A balanced cable does not necessarily be a better quality signal, but it rejects noise much better.
Courtney.
Yep, that's a good explanation. The only thing I might expand on that is to talk about star quad cable, which is a form of balanced cable. It's for 2 inputs that use the same technique, but they use 4 wires. This is Canary makes it. This is what it looks like when it has its jacket off. It has a good braided shield, and it has two connectors. I mean, it has two wires, twisted pair for each connector. And because each of those two, it has the blue wires and the white wires. And because each of those pair of blue wires and each pair of white wires are twisted inside that jacket, any electromagnetic noise that comes through, that makes its way through the jacket, like hum, is then neutralized by the twist and the summing back through when you add those two blue wires together and the two white wires together. So it gives you even more immunity to induction or noise that's induced in the wire by things that are running parallel to it that are high voltage and can get into that magnetic field of the wire itself.
Next question.
This one comes to us through the QR code. Shema Hervé in Kigali, Rwanda is asking, hi, how does DECT 6.0, like Hollyland, achieve clearer low-latency audio versus Bluetooth? Any tips to optimize range and avoid interference in live events? Thank you.
Alex?
Yeah, so DECT runs on the 1.9 band. So this is the 1.9 gigahertz. And the advantage of that is that it's not sitting inside of, typically not sitting inside of where Bluetooth sits. And so its latency, I believe, is around 20 milliseconds instead of 300. So it is it's a much lower latent. This was built for phones. So this is, so your wireless phone, DECT was really built for, and people started using these in production. So so there's a couple different, Hollyland's using DECT. In the United States, Clearcom uses DECT a lot. So we use the DECT platform frequently for our comms. It is relatively clear. It can handle a lot more duplex channels. We usually, again, are using it for comms, so it can do that. You can also attenuate it, so you can go into a low density mode where you're going to get higher quality, or a higher density mode where you're going to get a slightly lower quality, and you're going to get but you're going to get more people on it. And by the way, Robert Greene points out that it's the digital enhanced cordless telecommunications. But the only things that there's not much in that 1.9 gigahertz bandwidth. What you have to be very careful of is Plantronics. So that you cannot, if you have a big office full of Plantronics, they're all using DECT. so that's one problem. And then Microflex from Shure uses DECT for their mics. And so you have to be careful of, like, we have issues where we learned not to use Clearcom free speaks at the same time we were using Microflexes because they're all using the same bandwidth, and there is a limited amount of bandwidth that's there. So Mickey points out that it is DECT has a higher bandwidth than Bluetooth, which is true, and also that it relies on constant frequency hopping, which you need to be warned. You can hear little things as it starts to correct. If you're using it for mics, the Microflex works pretty well in offices. I don't know if I would put it into an event. We did do small events with it, but we kind of moved away from that. For larger events, you shouldn't use DECT, but you can use them for comms relatively effectively, and so I think that's what you're looking at for the Hollylands. So you should find that it's relatively useful. Again, it's very similar to what we use in FreeSpeak. We use them all the time, but you do want to pay attention to other people. It's not just frequency, because it's all sitting on the same frequency, so you can't do a lot of frequency management. So it's not like you're moving regular signals around that you would in a comm situation. So you got to be careful of what else is happening in the venue. We had an issue where somebody with another FreeSpeak system was in the hotel right next to us, and so we had an issue where we just all ran out of frequencies because they had a ton of stuff going on next to us. So those are things to kind of pay attention to.
Next question.
Paul Valhus in Austin, Texas is back with us. What does it mean to create an aggregate device for audio, such as described in this Apple support doc?
Good, Ronnie?
Yeah, so one of the reasons we would be doing that is to collect different types of hardware coming into your audio device. And on the software side, you probably have just one single device you can choose to use as your input device. So, for example, you have two microphones like this with USB interfaces. You have a sound card, and you might have a sound mixer that does other stuff. And you have NDI audio coming in, and you have other digital types of audio coming into your computer. But you're wishing to record everything in one software. And the way to do that, if you're just going to have all these different type of signals coming into your computer, you will have a nightmare getting all those into your DAW or recording software. So the way we use this is seen in the picture here. You collect all these devices virtually. You put them into one single multi-channeled device, and so that can, for example, end up with 8 different channels coming in on 8 different separate sources, and end up in one source with 8 different channels. That's the basic explanation.
And it's pretty amazing. Every time I went into aggregate audio devices on my Mac, I was always missing a checkbox or missing some sort of configuration that I got too frustrated with it to spend any more time. And then one day I discovered Loopback, and I was like, oh, Loopback can make these aggregate audio devices really easy because it's just little nodes, and I can select all my sources and select all my outputs and do all this routing, and all of a sudden I understood it. So if you're trying to make aggregate audio devices and you're finding yourself stumped, Loopback might get you to the finish line. Ronnie, you had one more thing?
Yeah, I just remember early in the show, someone said to me that you should always, on a Mac, purchase Loopback and Audio Hijack. And after I did that, all these aggregation in devices is just a walk in the park. So get Loopback and Audio Hijack as a package. That will save you hours and hours of frustration.
Rogue Amoeba, thank you. Just thanks. It's great. If you want to hang out with us in the evening, we've got evening shows for you to watch live or later. On Monday nights, it's Extra Hours. And we also have The Rundown with David Paskin on Thursday. So check us out. Next question.
Here's one from Andre Dole in Berlin. Any key takeaways from the MimoLive workshop yesterday?
I wasn't able to make the MimoLive workshop yesterday, but it is worth mentioning that if you've come into office hours and you went to officehours.global/join and you're part of the Discord, one of the things that we do once you're in the community is actually have these workshops just internally where we can sit down with Oliver, who he's the developer of the software, and to be able to have a back and forth with that is pretty special. But Ronnie, you had something for there?
Yeah, the discussion was about having the Zoom integration with different panelists or participants going into the same kind of multi-view, or 2-up or 3-up or 4-up, as we call them, and have the automatic layer not choose the fixed, for instance, host video. So when you have 1 or 2 hosts fixed on that layer, the automatic layer from Zoom does not choose one of them. So this is functionality that is available in Zoom tiles, for instance, and you can build them your own. But no, within MimoLive, you can actually build this automatically, and the next iteration will probably it's in beta now, so the next iteration will probably even more improved and make it possible for you to have several fixed persons in one of the layouts, and then have the automatic layer choose all the other ones that are speaking. So this is amazing functionality inside the software, and just makes automation and the effect of using MimoLive even more professional.
I think one of my favorite parts about software is when you come to the realization that of just how malleable it is, and how a conversation with a couple of smart people can make some pretty monumental changes in a lot of people's workflows. It's one of the most rewarding things when you make a change in software, make a suggestion to something, and then all of a sudden hundreds of people's workflows just got easier. And all it takes is an idea and a back and forth with the person who has the code. So you definitely check out the workshops. It's very cool back and forth. Next question.
From J.J. McKenna in Scavo, California. In nearly every dramatized law enforcement scene I've seen, folks are wearing rather evident earpieces, as mentioned earlier. Are there other discrete options actually in use for professional comms?
Go for Lindsay.
Yeah, the reason that I know that here that you go for Lindsay. The reason that I know that Ear Heroes exists is because I was working on an event with Secret Service, and I walked up to a Secret Service officer, and I said, "Can I ask you a question?" He put his hand quietly under his jacket and said, "Yes." like looked at me, and I said, "What kind of earpiece are you?" He was just like, and he was staring at me. I said, "What kind of earpiece is that?" And he takes his hand out of his jacket. And he goes, "Oh, it's an Ear Hero. It's great." So I can tell you the Secret Service are using Ear Heroes because I saw one and talked to him about it. So Ear Heroes are probably those. They are very, very thin. They're just little laces of a wire that come down. There are in some cases. I have seen security personnel use Phonex or a version of Phonex for those. Those are usually used for shorter engagements that aren't going to be all day because of the battery issues. And so those are specific to what needs to be happening there. But Ear Heroes are often connected to people's radios and so on and so forth to make that possible.
Courtney?
Yeah, I agree. I didn't know they were starting to use the Ear Heroes, though. Most of the ones that most of the Secret Service men I knew, and I don't know the number, have been using the Motorola's that look just like the ones that I'm wearing now, the H2S. They have the ear tube, but they also have this connector that goes on the side of the walkie-talkie here, and a microphone and a button that goes down your arm. That's why they're always talking into their sleeve. And you only want to have an earpiece in one ear because you need to keep your other ear open to hear people screaming at you. So it's a lot easier to use that way. The Phonak, like I said, the Phonak, they do make two different versions. One that uses just a transmitter, so you'd have to have a transmitter transmitting your comms. But the other one has a connector that is inductive, and there's a loop that you can get that goes around your neck underneath your clothes and plugs into the earpiece on your walkie-talkie or a Comtech receiver. Now, those don't run through batteries. They're really just like hearing aids. So the hearing aid batteries in the inductive Phonex, which don't have a radio receiver in them, last a lot longer. And so the battery that is driving them is in your walkie-talkie, because they're being driven inductively through a loop underneath your clothes.
Go ahead, Guy.
Yeah, as a former reseller of the Sidekick line, I can tell you that there's been a lot of even local productions here where last minute they just had to have them, and I used to keep them in stock. And just to give you an idea of what they look like, if I cut over to this image, this gentleman's wearing them, and if you look closely, that's about how discreet it is. It feels like fishing wire almost when you get your hands on it. It's really thin cable, so that's one of the options that we discussed earlier. But just to give you that visual as to how thin and how apparent it is to the naked eye.
Next question.
This one's from Michael Boitnott in Richmond, Virginia. Thoughts on the best software switcher on Mac for simple corporate streams? Been looking at Millumin, and it looks promising. Any others?
Nigel.
So I don't know Millumin. I just had a look at it. Looks very full-featured. In terms of switches for simple streams, I will tell you that I ran a podcast for many years just using Ecamm. And I really liked Ecamm. I thought it was easy to use. If I did more of a show, then I could just put these scenes in sequence. When I did a podcast, I used my Stream Deck, and that allowed me to switch manually without looking from camera to cameras, multiple cameras. You can have interviewers. I think the next level of that up is clearly MimoLive, which is a much more powerful than Ecamm, and then they go up from there. So it really depends how simple you want. The other nice thing about Ecamm, probably more than MimoLive, you'll get great MimoLive support from office hours, and there's 10,000 videos about Ecamm on YouTube.
Alex?
Yeah, I would say it's Ecamm or MimoLive, and again, we have a large community. We have a community of Ecamm users, a large community of MimoLive users that in our community. So you get a lot of support in those areas. Millumin is more of a multi-screen. I would normally think of that as a QLab competitor as opposed to a editor. I never thought of when you asked the question. I never thought of it using it as a switcher. So I guess it might be able to do that, but I don't know if that's its core competency. It's really designed as a multi-screen system from my experience with it.
Courtney?
And I'm going to ask Alex if he knows what Leo Laporte is using on MacBreak Weekly, because I know he's using a software switcher now. And is it Ecamm?
It's Ecamm.
Yeah.
Yep.
And he's had some problems with it, and he switched back to not Skype, but Zoom for a while because there were sync issues. Are they still having those sync issues with Ecamm?
I'm not sure. The sync is in a software switcher, sync tends to be kind of a problem. So whether it's OBS or MimoLive or Ecamm or many other ones, what happens is that if you push the processor too hard, it drops sync. So this is where we talk about like when you do it. And I started on software switchers, so I'm very I started on Wirecast. That's how, or actually FMLE, but started on Wirecast as our first little thing that we did stuff with, and so we became very sensitive to. If you are, if you're recording, you really have to aim for a 40% capacity. 40% of your CPU is what you're aiming for when you start your show. If you see it go over 60, all kinds of bad things happen, and sync is one of them. So as it starts to figure out how it's going to drop those, because remember that your audio and your video are going through separately through the entire system. And so what happens is that if it gets out of sync, if it's running out of processor speed, basically the video starts to get encoded a little slower. The audio never stops. So the audio always stays constant, because if you hear any clicks, people will stop watching. So audio is always prioritized. So a lot of times when you lose sync because of a CPU issue, you're going to find that your audio, like many other places, gets ahead of the video. And so that's where the sync usually drops off.
You can ask questions 24/7 at askofficehours.global. It's askofficehours.global. There's nothing to log into, nothing to sign up for. All you got to do is go to askofficehours.global, put in your name, put in your question, and we'll get it in over the next couple shows. Next question.
Andre Dole in Berlin is asking, Cindy, did you already decide on a capture card? If so, what was the deciding factor?
Go ahead, Cindy.
And that's me. I was looking for a HDMI capture card, 4K, as a backup to my DeckLink HDMI capture card in case the DeckLink card fails. And what I bought was a Magewell HDMI Pro 4K or whatever they call it, used on eBay for about $200. I already have one Magewell 4K. So what I'm looking to do is be able to use a different computer and in case the DeckLink card fails. So why did I decide on Magewell? Because I already have one and it's been working for 5 years and I like it. That's all. The others I don't know anything about.
Yeah, the only thing that I get nervous about, because I also I think I have that same card. It's the 4K Capture Plus or something like that. The USB, the software, the USB capture utility that comes with it exposes a lot of knobs that you, unless you know what you're doing, you probably shouldn't touch. Like it lets you, you can manually override EDID settings. You can go in there and change refresh rates and horizontal scan, and it's, and I can't resist. So I'm in there and I'm tweaking all the settings, and I got myself into a state in about 20 minutes that I just couldn't make the thing work again. I needed to flash the thing and start over. But yeah, it's cool. Thanks, Cindy. Next question.
Next one's from Paul Valhus in Austin, Texas. Comment on Google Photos' introduction of photo to video feature for creating motion from static photos. Available in the U.S. on Android and iPhone, with a link.
Courtney.
Well, this is a cool idea. They're trying to get that Gemini AI out into every platform that they can right now. And so what they've added here is, and you've seen probably some of these if you've spent more than a microsecond on YouTube, these people that are taking still photos from history and using AI to animate them, bring them to life, colorize them. So you'll have a picture of, Frederick Douglass or something taken many, many, many years ago before there was video, and animate them and make them blink their eyes and look and turn and speak. Whether or not this is using Veo 2, the way they show it is you pick a still photo from your Google Photos library, and then you tell it to animate it, and you can select whether you want subtle animation where it may just blink and maybe turn the head a little bit, or I'm feeling lucky, I think, is the other choice, which lets you do things like throw confetti up in the air. There's probably some very strong guardrails on this to prevent you from creating any kind of propaganda. And my question is, the other choice you have is to treat it with an artistic style. So you take a still picture and say, make me a Rembrandt, or turn me into an anime character. So you can choose a style, and it will reconstitute that picture in the style of your favorite artist. So that's an interesting thing. The question is, if you take a picture of you holding a guitar, let's say, I wonder if it'll animate it with audio and lay in a guitar piece of music and have you actually playing it. That would be a curious thing to try.
Yeah, no matter how much I try to look like a Picasso, I always end up looking like a Rubens. I'm just too round, just very kind of bulbous. But what I like about this is there's this like version of the future somewhere where people in their houses have like the hair, they're like doing a little motion and kind of waving at you. It seems kind of kitschy or gauche at first, but if it's subtle and it breathes a little bit of life into a photo, especially photos of people who are no longer with us, there's a warmth to it when it's done right that you don't get from just the picture itself. It can also, not be done right and be a little cringy, but this is one of those AI things that at first I didn't like, but now I'm kind of coming around to. Next question.
Next up, we have Steve Uroff in Madison, Wisconsin. And Steve is asking, need to simplify the current use of Sony A7 Plus shotgun mic to bring presenter on stage into workplace Microsoft Teams meeting. Need less opportunity for camera config error without sacrificing AV quality. Gear recommendations?
Ronnie.
Yeah, so I'm not sure which end I would start. There is a lot of UVC, HDMI to UVC converters that will help you on this road. Magwell has been discussed, and there's a lot of different types. And I'm going to introduce a problem. One of the many people out there are using Blackmagic's Ultra Studio Recorder 3G for this SDI or HDMI input. And the thing is that this is not providing UVC input. And I'm coming back to that. The problem inside Teams is that it expects, by definition, only a certain type of moving video coming into it. So using something like the Ultra Studio Recorder, which has a higher quality of the image going into Teams, will sometimes give you a good picture inside it and sometimes not. And the problem is that unlike Zoom and a lot of other type of software like MimoLive, etc., Teams is not accepting any type of video. It has to be a specific format and supposedly just UVC within a certain quality and a certain specification. So be very thorough when you are selecting your equipment and make sure that this is actually hardware physical compatible with Teams. We've had numerous problems with Teams, and using Teams is seen for our company as last resort, and sometimes we don't accept using Teams at all. And if you just have to use Teams, be very sure that you select a hardware gadget that actually support Teams.
Next question.
Coming to us from Hassa, Saudi Arabia, Khalid Al-Jumaya is asking, For the most comfortable keyboard, I highly recommend the Lofree. I've been using the V1 for the past 2 years and truly enjoy it. The new Lofree Flow Pro V2 void switches, which are extremely quiet. And a link.
Alex.
While we were reading this I found on YouTube, and I haven't been able to listen to it all. I've just been looking at it. But this is a comparison of the Lofree with the Newfie, the Lofree with the Newfie. So I'm going to go back and look at that because I'm a big Newfie fan. So this one is head to head. And I haven't had a chance to look at it, but it gets into lots of switches and options and so on and so forth. But for me, that's going to be the go-to video, is to figure that out. I don't have a strong opinion about Lofree. I have a very strong opinion about Newfie, which I like a lot. I've got a couple of them, a growing collection of Newfies of different sizes, and so they're probably my favorite keyboards. And so, but the Lofree looks really cool. So I'm always I'm kind of in a constant state of buying keyboards. So it's for some new computer somewhere, and so maybe I'll get one to test it.
Courtney.
Yeah, and I don't read Chinese, but I'm trying to figure out what the one that they pointed to has this touch panel on the side of it. I haven't seen that on a keyboard before, so I don't know whether that's to control volume or you can just use it as some type of touch control, but I don't think it replaces a mouse. I'm not sure what its function is, and I haven't had a chance to. I think the video only contains music on it, so I don't think it has an explanation of what it is.
Yeah, I would look at that comparison video between the Newfie and the low.
And it is a Kickstarter. So it looks like the Lofree people for version 1, they raised $1.3 million to get the first one out the door, and then they are doing the same thing for version 2, and they've hit their goal. They're leaving it open until August 5th, but the way that they're selling these void switches and the Newfie 2, the big draw is that it's supposed to be silent, like it's the all but quietest keyboard. And it's interesting what they've done here is you have this. I've taken a keyboard that's either a Keychron or a Newfie style keyboard and put little tiny O-rings in it. Like little tiny rubber dampeners just to get the clickety-click sound off, because even though I think the blue switches on my keyboard are really nice, the people who work in my proximity aren't always as big of a fan of it. So if you work with other people, quieting it down is a little nice. But I also am looking for something like this, because if they've taken the time to put in 3 different levels of dampening to try and cut that down, if the feel of the keyboard is still really good, then and it can be silent, it might be a good thing to have in proximity to, I don't know, a microphone, maybe. Next question.
Here's a question from Robert Green in Los Angeles. Yesterday, Apple released public betas of various OS 26s. Have you checked any of them out?
Alex?
I'm playing the only one I'm playing with right now is the iPad. I will update my iPhone, but I wanted to see how the iPad worked. It's cool. I don't mind. I mean, there's a lot of controversy about the buttons. I find them to be fine. Like the semi-transparent stuff all looks really nice to me. There's definitely a fine little back and forth with it, so I think that's fine. It's really odd to have my iPad. I went ahead and set it to multitask, and so now I have a desktop with multiple apps open. I'm very disoriented. So that's the only thing that because I didn't get into the developer betas. I just decided I didn't want to deal with it. So I ran the update overnight. So literally this morning I opened it up and I was like, whoa, look at this. And so now I've opened up and I've got multiple windows open. It just feels like a Mac. I'm not sure if I like that yet, but you can easily go back to full screen as well. So it looks good. It looks good so far. So it'll be interesting to see where it goes from there. But I think that it feels more like a Mac probably than an iPad has in the past. So we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, if the Mac was the computer for the rest of us years ago, it feels like the iPad is now the computer for the rest of us for a lot of people.
I have to say the other thing is there's things that Apple does, and Kevin and I were looking at something yesterday that Apple does insane things, and they do things that it's not really a feature. They just decided to do something because what we call surprise, surprise and delight, little things. So I was watching. I have the ability to connect my phone to a really large screen and watch and listen to music. So I'm listening to 5.1 to see how it sounds in a really big space. And so I see the lyrics coming up on a 70-foot screen, right? And so I didn't notice it on my phone, but for some of the songs, they are getting. It's not just that the letters are getting highlighted; they're like singing with it. Like
there's a little bloom. It like
the
gets
bloom.
a little bigger.
Like if they hold a note, on a thing, it blooms and it's a little bit bigger, and it's just like. And you got to that there's an app somewhere in Cupertino that someone's sitting there like animating. It's not like automatic. Somebody is animating and it's not every song. So we always call it the small text. They're small text songs. That means that you're not big enough yet, or there's some rights issue or something else. But then you get to the lyrics, and you have the lyrics that are and they're getting highlighted, and then there's the Billie Eilishes and the Fleetwood Macs and everything else that enough people listen to that someone put a hand. I'm sure it's hand animated because it looks. There's no way it's hand animated. They hand animated the text. Anyway, that was my like whoa moment yesterday because I had never noticed it before, and when each word is a foot high, it's easier to see.
If you want to check out a little bit of what you may be in for before you install something like this, I would recommend over at sixcolors.com. The folks over there, Dan Moore and Jason Snell, have watchOS 26 first look, iPadOS 26, iOS,
By the way,
Tahoe.
As we talk about it, I went to go ahead and I had two apps up. And then the system came up, and I went to get rid of it, and my iPad froze. So like it's just frozen. I have one window kind of halfway closed. Oh, it just restarted. I've never seen my iPad restart like that.
So the Windows server crashes. I was actually doing something in Photoshop on the iPad yesterday that was running the beta 4, and every time I moved my cursor over the Photoshop window, like it created a bunch of graphic artifacts and stuff everywhere. And
it's not turn it off. Yeah. So no, it is a beta. Like it's a beta. So use it with care. If you're using your iPad for important things, don't do what I just did.
And if you need an out, you can just cheekily say, blame it on the beta. I didn't send that email. Blame it on the beta. It's fine. Next question.
Next one's from Jeff Veely in Henderson, Texas. I'm seeking some aluminum pipe similar in size and strength to what Autopoles are made of. Which suppliers would you use for longer lengths?
Courtney.
Well, if you're looking to use speed rail, which is in the movie industry, that's the common size. There's a company called CineMilled that makes some really nice speed rail. These are the various sizes they make it in. The most common probably is the 1.5 inch, which is number 3 down here. It's 1.9 inches. And sometimes they use the slightly smaller size, the number 2 there. But it's a thick-walled aluminum tubing. You don't want to use thin-walled aluminum tubing if you're going to add any kind of C-clamps or anything to it that could dent it or could cause it to crimp. And speed rail will hold up over a fairly long distance. The nice thing about CineMilled, they make black anodized speed rail. So it's great to hide if you're going to use it on car mounts or something that could be reflected in a window or something. The black speed rail will show up less likely if you're driving at night, things like that. So, or you're putting it somewhere where it can be reflected in things. On the regular clear anodized or just raw aluminum ones, can be a little bit unsightly, but the black looks really cool. But it's about $30 a foot, so keep that in mind. Alex.
Yeah, the one that I ran into after lots of looking around and have ordered mine, and mine's just I'm waiting to put it up, is Industrial Metal Supply, and they are both up here in San Jose as well as down in I think in Santa Clarita, I believe, but there's an LA location for it. They might have a couple other ones that are there, but Industrial Metal, and that's, so the anodized black is still expensive, but I don't know if it's $30 a foot. But I believe what I ended up paying for this was for Schedule 40. So that's the Schedule 40 1.5 inch. I think I ended up paying I believe like $3.50 or $4 a foot, which is about the number that I was looking for. so it's a, and so there was a lot of them that are up there that I saw that were in the, $7 to $10 a foot range. And I just felt like, I was like, what is going on? I never spent that kind of money on this before. And I realized because my company had been using industrial metal supply long ago, and I wasn't the one doing the orders. And so they are super responsive. They also sell all the Hollander connectors and everything else. Just remember that you're not going to span your typical, 1.5 is a typical one. I've used 1.75 and even 2 inch at times. The Schedule 40 is usually pretty what you need. If you want to give it a little bit more stiffness, you can go to Schedule 80. And that's going to be a thicker, it's going to same outside diameter, but a thicker metal. But you're not going to go over 20 feet. So 20 feet is the longest that I've seen these available. So 20 foot is your outside, and then you have to start figuring out how you're going to. I'm making another grid for somebody else. Now that I got my grid, I'm building somebody else's grid, and I'm figuring out how to go to. Will be about 28 by 28, something like that. And so that's the next. And when it's freestanding, it becomes more complicated. You can make these go longer if you're hanging them from the ceiling, because then you're just connecting them, and they're not pulling all the weight down, but you have to figure out what you're going to support them with in the ceiling.
And Alex mentioned he's near San Jose. Further south, they do have locations in L.A., in Orange County, San Diego, Inland Empire, Phoenix, and Tucson. If you're not in Southern California or Arizona, you would find, if you look for that Schedule 40 aluminum pipe, odds are if you're close to any city of any size, there's some industrial metal supplier, metal supermarket shop that you can go to find stuff like this. It's just, when you go into those places, know what you're buying before you walk in the door, because they're going to have a little bit of everything. So if you don't know what the spec is, you may end up walking out with the wrong thing. If you're finding office hours valuable, there are a couple ways you can help. You can like and subscribe to our channel. You can volunteer both during the show, around the show, and we have opportunities for that at officehours.global/volunteer. Finally, we've got officehours.global/donate. That's where you can contribute to the show financially. Helps us run, helps us keep the lights on, and we appreciate it. So you can head over to officehours.global/donate to do that, and we appreciate all the support. Next question.
This one is from Andre Dole in Berlin. Any YouTube channels that you'd like to recommend?
Ronnie.
Yeah, I have one specifically. It's a little out there, but it's kind of cool for all those that are building home studios like this, even if it's for just listening to music or creating something or being in a podcast or a panelist or fixing your office space. And that is this guy. He's called Jasko. He has this YouTube channel called Acoustic Insider, and he is really diving deep in both the easy way to fix things and the more advanced ways of fixing stuff. And he also have a really good website as well. There are numerous resources out there talking about this, but this one is specifically going very deep if you'd like to know more about the actual physics in sound waves in the room.
Nigel.
Yeah, I watch one podcast every week for definite. It's called the All In Podcast. It's not really technology. It's it's technology, business. It's people who are venture capitalists talking about the world around them. I find that a very both entertaining and interesting. David Sachs, who's the AI czar in the current administration, is one of the key panelists, and he'll come in and out. If it gets too political, he'll drop out. But I find that a good background every week, very deep conversations. The other thing I actually listened to this morning, a conversation between Stephen Fry, or Sir Stephen Fry as he is now, and Noah Yuval Harari, who some of you may know wrote Sapiens, about AI. It's only half an hour long, but it has some great thoughts on it and really is worth your thinking time. And I put it in the chat.
Courtney?
It really depends on what you're into. If you're into visual effects, I'd recommend the Corridor Crew. That is interesting. They do a weekly breakdown of good and bad visual effects and comment. They have these digital visual effects artists comment on certain movies they've seen and what's good and what's bad in the visual effects that appear. And almost every movie has visual effects in. They also do stuntmen react. So if you're looking at those crazy stunts that appear in all these movies now, they have guest stuntmen come in, sit on the couch, and talk about the stunts they've done in a variety of action movies. So that's interesting. If you want to just learn more and educate yourself on a whole variety of interesting subjects and topics throughout history and things like urban myths, I always recommend Answers with Joe, which is Joe Scott does a weekly podcast, and it's a deep dive. It's usually about 30 to 40-minute dive into a single subject usually. And he really does a whole lot of research and presents a whole lot of visual pictures and animations and things to illustrate the topic that he's talking about. And it's always an interesting subject, and you can find on this channel a whole sheaf of, he's been doing it for several years now, maybe 5 or 6 years now. So there's a whole lot of very interesting topics there, all explained in depth.
Alex?
I got a couple. There's so many that I looked at my subscriptions. I have like 200 subscriptions in YouTube, and they kind of drive my For You page or whatever, my home page or whatever. So, but I'll show you a handful for today. If you ask it again, I'll show you a different handful. But some of the ones that I pay attention to are Dave Rat. Dave Rat is he's the sound engineer for the Red Hot Chili Peppers. And when you watch him at first, you're like, I don't know if all the brain cells are there, but man, does he know his stuff. Like, he is so deep into, like talking, he'll tear things apart and talk about why they work and why they don't work. Super smart dude. And so then another one that for AI stuff, for AI media, theoretically media. So this is all I can't think of the guy's name, but he's basically I watch a lot of his to like look at how he's taking advantage of different image and video generators for AI. So that kind of keeps me up to speed with a lot of those things there. Studio Binder, I just enjoy. It's really behind the scenes it really breaks down movies. So it's breaking down, it might not be visual effects, it might be how things are framed or how something is approached or how the history of things. And so I find Studio Binder to be really fun to watch as far as just general context. And then the last one I'll talk about right now is Byte Go. This stuff is pretty deep to explain things. What I love watching is just the pure eye candy. So when you watch what he's doing here, he's really good. And I always think about, if I'm doing diagrams for stuff, I want to be able to get better at doing things that look like how he kind of puts it together. It's just a very in addition to being really interesting, it's put together exceptionally well. And so I look at it and think about how to do those things.
Guy?
Yeah, I'll go with Live Production Mastery from Brandon Peltz. This channel is very intense for those of us that are out there in the field doing live events. You could see how he sets up his command centers, if you will. And he actually worked with Noah Sargent on this last one that he did. He gives a shout out where they brought out that $265,000 Fujinon lens for the BET experience. So if you tune into this latest episode, you could see his setup with all his stream decks, and he's got tips on how he runs fiber. So in the last couple of episodes, he's really shown some of these innovative things that he's doing. This one right here that's called No Other Console Does This, 4-in-1 powerhouse. He dismantles this console and makes it so that he can run his ATEM from his lighting board and his audio mixer. It's pretty crazy. So I recommend that channel, Live Production Mastery.
Alex?
Other ones that were brought up, Veritasium, of course, Veritasium. Nutty for live streaming. JJ talked about, also JJ pointed out that Physics Girl, she had a lot of health issues. She's back, and she's got a lot of great stuff. Torah Tech Tips by David Paskin, Cindy pointed out. And, David's obviously someone in our community. And JJ said the band that killed Mr. Bungle. I don't know if that is an actual one. Cindy Drozda also said Mr. Alex Tech.
I'm going to give a shout out to Wendover Productions and Real Life Lore and the stuff that they do not only on YouTube but also over on Nebula. They're they're longer form, but man, you learn some really deep stuff about very specific things, and it's so fun.
The one that I listen to while I'm cleaning my garage, constantly like trying to reorder it or whatever. If I spend a couple hours, is Diary with a CEO, Diary of a CEO. So there's like 2-hour interviews with thinkers, and it's just like you just kind of have to immerse yourself in it. And I find that when I'm cleaning, I'm going to have a couple hours in my garage. I'm going to be reordering something or putting something together, and I just turn that on in the background, and it's amazing, thought-provoking conversations as well.
Let's sneak in one more.
This one is from Jeff Veely in Henderson, Texas. Is Discord's I Need Help the best place to reach out to local office hours members when you could use an extra hand for an event?
Alex.
We need to work on this, and it's something that I've thought about over the last 5 years because I need local help. And so being able to find people is something, it is probably the best place right now, but it is on our, we're talking about it and thinking about how do we build something where members who want to be available can have a place to register themselves and say, this is where I am. Because like, for instance, if people just gave us some basic information, we don't need their street address. But if we know basically where they are, it would allow us to build maps that you could look at. If you haven't played with my maps on Google, I use them constantly. And so to visualize where things are, how things are running. And so I'm constantly in need of local capacity. And I know that there are people that we haven't hired just because we didn't have their information. So I think that we'll work on that. But I Need Help is probably the best place, but it's not super responsive, and we need to get better at it.
If you're interested in helping us develop the office hours bat signal, get into Discord and look out for the volunteer meetings. We need a couple of people, and we can make it happen. It's amazing. Thank you, everyone, so much. Thanks, first of all, to the producers for asking such great questions and helping drive the conversation. It's a really short show. If we don't have questions, and you came through for us yet again for thousands and thousands and thousands of questions and shows, and appreciate you. Also to our panel today, thank you for being here. It's always a privilege to spend an hour getting smarter. Thanks to all the life experience that shows up. We are quite spoiled. And finally, thank you to the back-end crew. Not only during the show, making us look and sound good, getting us in here. It's really white glove. I mean, like luxury. But also, thank you to the folks who organize all around the show. Tlaloc Traversal today, 74,000 miles, 119,000 kilometers. That's 584 million bananas for scale. All right, we'll see you in After Hours. I thought I was getting the hook. Like it's like when the Oscars, they play the music.
They're done.
Hey, I was at a party the other day, and look at this. Like there you go. There's your photo for the day.
All right.
Party time.
Apparently, that's the sign that they're North Korean hackers. Is that they make a lot of Minion references?
Oh, really?
Like, yeah. Do you have sleeper? I saw this article. It was like, do you have sleeper people in your remote workforce? It's like, look for excessive mentions of Minions in their Teams chats. I said, what?
I love Minions. My wife hates Minions, and I love the Minions, and so it's constant back and forth.
I just stumbled across this, Joe Scott. What happened to the first human head transplant? That's an interesting one. I'm going to have to take a look at.
I just the thing is everybody's cooked because there is so much content on YouTube that I find fascinating, and I don't need to I sit down. I'm like,